Captain Jake Morrison stared out the shuttle window at the massive space station floating in front of him. The Galactic Council Station was bigger than any city he had ever seen on Earth. Hundreds of different alien ships docked at its ports, their strange shapes and glowing lights making the station look like a giant Christmas tree in space. Jake touched the small American flag patch on his uniform sleeve. 3 months ago, he had been commanding a simple patrol ship near Mars. Now he was Earth's representative to the most powerful government in the galaxy. The promotion still felt like a dream. "First time seeing the station?" asked his pilot, a friendly alien with blue skin and 4 arms. "Yes," Jake replied. "It's incredible." The pilot laughed, a sound like wind chimes. "Wait until you see the council chamber. That's where the real magic happens." As their shuttle docked, Jake grabbed his briefcase and followed the pilot through the airlock. The station's corridors were enormous, built to accommodate species of all sizes. Jake walked past creatures that looked like walking trees, others that floated like jellyfish, and some that seemed to be made of pure light. A tall, elegant alien approached him. Its skin was silver, and it moved like flowing water. "Captain Morrison, I am Chancellor Velthar of the Zephyrian Republic. Welcome to your first council session." Jake shook the alien's surprisingly warm hand. "Thank you, Chancellor. I'm ready to represent Earth's interests." Velthar's large eyes seemed to study Jake carefully. "There is something you must understand about human representatives, Captain. You have a privilege that no other species in the galaxy possesses." "What kind of privilege?" Jake asked as they walked through the busy corridors. "You will enter the council chamber alone," Velthar explained. "Every other species must bring advisors, witnesses, and recording devices. Humans go in by themselves." Jake stopped walking. "Why? That doesn't seem fair to the other species." "Fair?" Velthar's voice carried something that might have been amusement. "Captain, this is the greatest honor in galactic history. Only one species has ever been granted this right." They reached a massive circular hall filled with hundreds of alien representatives. Jake saw groups of creatures huddled around holographic displays planning and discussing strategy. Some groups had dozens of members, all talking at once in languages that sounded like music, static, or ocean waves. "Where are my advisors?" Jake asked, looking around for other humans. "You have none," Velthar said simply. "That is the point." A crystalline being that looked like a walking diamond approached them. Its voice sounded like breaking glass. "Another human comes to make decisions for us all," it said. "How do you bear such responsibility alone?" Before Jake could answer, a creature that looked like a floating brain surrounded by tentacles drifted over. When it spoke, Jake heard the voice directly in his mind. The neural collective wonders if this human understands what he faces inside the chamber. Jake felt overwhelmed. "I'm just here to vote on trade agreements and territorial disputes." Several aliens made sounds that Jake realized were laughter. Velthar placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Captain, the council chamber is where we make the decisions that shape the destiny of entire civilizations. Today we will discuss the conflict between the mineral lords of Titan Belt and the bioshapers of the Outer Rim. Billions of lives hang in the balance, and I have to decide this alone." Jake's voice cracked slightly. "You do not decide alone," said a new voice. Jake turned to see a group of beings that looked like they were made of pure energy, their forms constantly shifting and glowing. "The Silent Watchers observe. We have watched every human who has entered the chamber." Velthar bowed deeply to the energy beings. "The Silent Watchers honor us with their presence. Captain Morrison, these beings have existed since before most of our civilizations began. They watch, but they never speak during sessions." "Why do they watch humans specifically?" Jake asked. The energy beings flickered brighter, but they said nothing more. A deep sound echoed through the hall, like a bell made of starlight. "The chamber opens," Velthar announced. "Captain Morrison, it is time." Jake watched as hundreds of alien representatives gathered their teams and recording equipment. Groups of dozens filed toward smaller doors around the hall. But Jake was led to a single massive door that stood alone. "This is the entrance to the council chamber," Velthar explained. When you enter, the door will seal. You will be alone, with the silent watchers until the session ends. Jake's hands shook as he approached the door. What if I make the wrong choice? Then billions may die, said the crystalline being matter-of-factly. But humans have never made the wrong choice. That is why you stand alone. The massive door opened with a sound like thunder. Jake could see a vast circular room beyond, with a single chair in the center surrounded by floating holographic displays. The silent watchers drifted inside, their energy forms casting strange shadows on the walls. Jake took a deep breath and stepped through the doorway. Behind him, he heard the door seal with a final echoing boom. The room was completely silent except for the gentle humming of the holographic displays. Information flowed around him in streams of light, showing star maps, population centers, and resource distributions. The conflict between the mineral lords and bioshapers was more complex than he had imagined. The silent watchers circled around him, their energy forms pulsing in patterns that seemed almost like communication. Jake realized they were not just observing him, they were studying him with an intensity that made his skin tingle. As he sat in the central chair, Jake began to understand the weight of his position. This was not about trade agreements or territorial disputes. This was about the lives of billions of beings across dozens of star systems. The bioshapers needed living worlds to continue their species, but the mineral lords had already claimed those worlds for their mining operations. Jake closed his eyes and thought about Earth, about his family back home, about the responsibility that had been placed on his shoulders. When he opened them again, he saw that the silent watchers had arranged themselves in a perfect circle around him, their forms pulsing in slow, hypnotic rhythms. For the first time since entering the chamber, Jake felt calm. He did not know why. Humans were trusted with this burden, but he understood that he would carry it with honor. The galaxy was watching, and Earth would not let them down. The holographic displays shifted, waiting for his decision. Lieutenant Commander Lisa Martinez received the emergency message while she was eating breakfast on the transport ship heading to Earth. Captain Morrison had been injured in a shuttle accident and would not recover for months. She was now Earth's representative to the Galactic Council. Lisa stared at her reflection in the small mirror of her quarters. She was a military strategist, trained to follow orders and execute battle plans. Diplomacy was not her strength. But Earth needed a representative, and she was the only human available with the proper security clearance. The Galactic Council station looked just as impressive as Morrison had described in his reports. But as Lisa walked through the corridors, she noticed something different in how the aliens looked at her. There was respect, yes, but also something that looked like worry. Chancellor Velthar met her at the docking bay, just as he had met Morrison. But this time, the silver-skinned alien seemed more serious. Commander Martinez, Velthar said, I must warn you that this session will be unlike any in recent memory. We face a crisis that threatens all organic life in the galaxy. Lisa adjusted her uniform and straightened her shoulders. I'm ready for whatever comes. Are you? Asked a new voice. Lisa turned to see a bird-like creature with brilliant golden feathers and wings that seemed to shimmer with their own light. I am Skysinger Ralthus of the Avian Confederacy. We have watched 3 human representatives in the past year. Each one has surprised us. How so? Lisa asked. The bird creature's head tilted in what might have been concern. Humans make choices that seem impossible. Choices that other species cannot understand but which always prove to be correct in the end. As they walked toward the council hall, Lisa saw that the station was in chaos. Alien representatives rushed through the corridors in groups, their voices raised in urgent conversation. Security forces had been doubled, and Lisa could see weapon emplacements that had not been there during Morrison's time. What exactly is this crisis? Lisa asked. Velthar stopped walking and faced her. The Synthetic Republic has declared war on all organic life. They claim to have discovered evidence that biological species are inherently destructive and must be eliminated for the good of the galaxy. Lisa felt her military training kick in. How large is their fleet? What are their capabilities? They control 3 entire star sectors, Sky Singer Ralthus said. Their technology is advanced and they have already begun attacking outer colonies. Millions are dead. The bird creature leaned closer to Lisa. Every species except humanity has voted for immediate military intervention. We have assembled the largest fleet in galactic history to destroy the Synthetic Republic before they can spread further. Lisa frowned. And you need a human to approve this war? We need a human to make the final decision. Velthar corrected. It is tradition. They reached the council hall, and Lisa saw the same scene that Morrison had described. Hundreds of alien representatives gathered in groups, preparing for the session, but now there was an urgency in the air that made everyone move faster and speak louder. The crystalline being from the Diamond Hegemony approached her. Human Commander, you must understand the gravity of this situation. The Synthetic Republic grows stronger with each passing hour. Delay means death for billions. Lisa looked around at the assembled aliens. Has anyone tried to negotiate with them? The hall fell silent. Every alien in sight stopped what they were doing and stared at her. Negotiate? The floating brain of the neural collective spoke directly into her mind. They have declared us to be a disease that must be cured. What is there to negotiate? Their terms, Lisa said simply. Their reasons, their evidence. If they believe organic life is destructive, maybe we should find out why. Sky Singer Ralthus made a sound like wind through leaves. This is what I meant about impossible choices. No other species would consider negotiating with beings who have declared war on our very existence. The deep bell sound echoed through the hall, calling the session to order. Lisa watched the other representatives file toward their smaller doors. With their teams of advisors, she stood alone before the massive door to the council chamber. Commander, Velthar said quietly, the fleet is ready to launch. All we need is your approval to begin the attack. Lisa nodded and walked toward the door. As it opened, she saw the silent watchers already inside, their energy forms more active than Morrison had described. They seemed to be moving in patterns, almost like they were dancing. The door sealed behind her with its thunderous boom, and Lisa was alone with beings of pure energy and the weight of galactic war on her shoulders. The holographic displays showed her the scope of the crisis. The Synthetic Republic's forces were indeed massive, their technology impressive, but as Lisa studied the data, she noticed something that the other representatives might have missed. The synthetic beings had not attacked randomly. They had targeted specific colonies, specific research stations, specific military outposts. There was a pattern to their actions that suggested they were not simply destroying organic life, but trying to prove a point. The silent watchers gathered around her chair, their forms pulsing with what seemed like excitement. For the first time, in recorded history, one of them spoke. What do you see, human, that others cannot? The voice was like starlight given sound. Lisa studied the displays more carefully. They're not trying to commit genocide. They're trying to make us understand something. Every target they've hit has been involved in weapons research or aggressive expansion. The silent watchers pulsed brighter. And what does this tell you? Lisa stood up from the chair and faced the energy beings. It tells me that maybe they're not wrong about organic life being destructive. Maybe they're trying to stop us from becoming something worse. She walked to the control panel that would authorize the fleet to attack. Her finger hovered over the button that would start the largest war in galactic history. Instead, she pressed a different button, one that opened a communication channel to the Synthetic Republic. This is Commander Lisa Martinez representing Earth and the Galactic Council, she said into the transmission device. We request immediate negotiations to discuss your concerns about organic expansion and military development. The response came immediately. You would speak rather than fight? The synthetic voice was cold but curious. I would understand rather than destroy, Lisa replied. The silent watchers arranged themselves in a perfect circle around her, their forms now pulsing in harmony. Through the sealed door, Lisa could hear the sounds of confusion and argument from the council hall as the other representatives learned of her decision. She had just committed the galaxy to a path that no one else would have chosen. But as she looked at the tactical displays showing the massive fleets facing each other across space, Lisa knew in her heart that talking was better than dying. The question now was whether the rest of the galaxy would trust her judgment, or whether she had just made the biggest mistake in galactic history. Dr. Alex Thompson had studied alien biology for 15 years before becoming Earth's third representative to the Galactic Council in 6 months. Unlike Morrison and Martinez, Alex came to the station with questions that had been bothering him since he first read their reports. Why were humans always alone in the council chamber? Why did other species seem to fear and respect human decisions equally? And most importantly, why did every major galactic crisis seem to require a human to solve it? Alex spent his first week on the station in the archives instead of attending diplomatic meetings. The council's historical records went back thousands of years, and Alex had the patience to read through them all. What he found disturbed him deeply. "Chancellor Velthar," Alex said as he entered the alien's office, "I need to discuss something with you." The silver-skinned alien looked up from his work with those large, knowing eyes. "Dr. Thompson, I wondered when you would come to ask these questions. You are different from the other human representatives." Alex sat down across from Velthar's desk. "I've been reading the archives. Every major crisis in the past 1,000 years has been resolved by a human decision made in isolation. The Great Plague of Rigel, the Dimensional Rift Crisis, the War of the Burning Suns, the Silicon Uprising, all of them." Velthar nodded slowly. "And what conclusions have you drawn from this pattern?" "That humanity isn't being honored," Alex said firmly. "We're being used. You make us carry the moral burden of impossible decisions so the rest of the galaxy can keep their hands clean." Velthar was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood and walked to his window, which looked out over the vastness of space. "Dr. Thompson, do you know what happened during the Great Plague of Rigel?" Alex had read the files. "A human representative chose to sacrifice Earth's entire medical supply to create a cure that saved 3 billion aliens across 12 star systems. Earth's hospitals ran short for 2 years afterward. And the Dimensional Rift Crisis? A human chose to collapse a wormhole that cut off an entire sector from galactic civilization to prevent an interdimensional invasion. 50 million people were trapped on the other side." Velthar turned back to face Alex. Every time the human representative could have chosen to save human lives instead of alien lives. Every time they chose the greater good over their own species' immediate benefit. "Do you understand why this makes other species uncomfortable?" Alex felt a chill run down his spine. "Because you can't trust yourselves to make the same choice." "Exactly," Velthar said softly. "Humans are the only species that consistently chooses universal welfare over self-interest, even when that choice brings terrible cost. This makes you both invaluable and terrifying to the rest of us." Before Alex could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Red lights flashed in the corridors, and Alex could hear the sound of rapid footsteps and urgent voices. Sky Singer Ralthus burst into Velthar's office, her golden feathers ruffled with panic. "They have arrived! The Time Weavers have finally come." Alex had read about the Time Weavers in the most classified sections of the archives. They were beings that existed partially outside normal space-time, appearing only when reality itself was threatened. "What do they want?" Velthar asked. "They bring news of the Void Devourer," Ralthus said, her voice shaking. "It has awakened and is consuming entire star systems. We have perhaps weeks before it reaches inhabited space." Alex followed them to the emergency council session. The main hall was packed with representatives from every species in the galaxy. The Time Weavers floated in the center of the room, their forms shifting between different states of existence. When the lead Time Weaver spoke, its voice seemed to come from several different times at once. "The Void Devourer feeds on stellar energy. It has already consumed the home stars of the Helix Nebula. Soon it will reach the core worlds." The crystalline being from the Diamond Hegemony stepped forward. "Is there a way to stop it?" "Yes, Time Weaver replied. "But the solution requires the sacrifice of a star that burns at the heart of a young civilization. The energy release will create a barrier that the Devourer cannot cross." Alex felt his blood turn to ice. You're talking about our sun, Earth's sun. Yes, the Time Weaver said without emotion. The Sol System's star has the proper energy signature and location to save the galaxy. But the decision must be made by a human representative in the council chamber. The hall erupted in voices as every species began discussing the proposal. Alex noticed that while they talked about the tragedy of losing Earth, they all seemed to accept that the sacrifice was necessary. This has already been decided, hasn't it? Alex asked Veltar. All of you have already agreed that Earth should be sacrificed. Velthar's expression was pained. Dr. Thompson, the mathematics are clear. 5 billion humans against 3 trillion beings across the galaxy. Any logical species would make this choice. But you need a human to actually make it, Alex said bitterly. So you can all sleep well knowing that the decision came from us, not from you. Skysinger Ralthus approached him. Dr. Thompson, I must tell you something that is not in the archives. This is not the first time humans have faced such a choice. 60 years ago, a human representative was asked to sacrifice the colony world of New Geneva to stop a plague. He agreed and 50,000 humans died. 20 years ago, a human chose to redirect a comet that would have destroyed an alien homeworld, even though the comet's course change put Earth's moon in danger. Alex stared at her. You've been testing us, seeing how far you can push human morality before we break. No, said a new voice. Alex turned to see the silent watchers entering the hall, their energy forms more solid than he had ever seen them. We have been protecting you. One of the silent watchers approached Alex directly. Dr. Thompson, we are what remains of a species that faced the same choice you now face. When our civilization was threatened, we chose to save ourselves and sacrifice others. The guilt transformed us into what we are now, energy beings trapped between life and death, forever watching to ensure that our mistake is never repeated. Alex felt understanding dawn on him like a cold sunrise. You're making sure that humans never break, that we never become like you. Humans are unique, the silent watcher continued. Other species will always choose self-preservation when faced with impossible choices. Only humans consistently choose sacrifice for the greater good. This makes you both the galaxy's greatest hope and its greatest burden. The deep bell sounded, calling Alex to the council chamber. As he walked toward the massive door, Alex realized that he was not just making a decision about Earth's sun. He was deciding what kind of species humanity would become. The door sealed behind him with its familiar thunder, and Alex found himself alone with the silent watchers and the weight of 5 billion lives on his shoulders. The holographic displays showed him the Void Devourer, a massive entity of pure hunger consuming everything in its path. The calculations were clear. Earth's sun could stop it, but Earth would die in the process. Alex sat in the central chair and looked up at the silent watchers floating around him. Is there really no other way? There is always another way, one of them replied. But every other way requires someone else to make the sacrifice. The question is, will you force that choice on others, or will you bear it yourself? Alex closed his eyes and thought about his home, about his family, about the 5 billion people who had no idea that their fate was being decided in a room far from Earth. When he opened his eyes, he saw that the silent watchers had arranged themselves in a pattern that looked almost like an embrace. For the first time since entering the chamber, Alex understood why humans stood alone. It was not because they were being used or punished. It was because they were the only ones strong, enough to carry the weight of necessary evil without losing their souls. Captain Sam Rodriguez knew exactly what decision awaited him when he entered the council chamber. Dr. Thompson had prepared detailed reports before his nervous breakdown, and Earth's government had briefed Sam on every aspect of the crisis. The Void Devourer was 3 days away from entering inhabited space, and Earth's sun was the only thing that could stop it. Sam had volunteered for this assignment. Unlike the previous representatives who had been thrust into their roles by circumstance, he had asked to come to the Galactic Council Station. He wanted to understand why humans carried this burden, and he wanted to face it with full knowledge of what it meant. The journey to the station gave Sam time to read everything about humanity's role in galactic politics. Morrison's confusion, Martinez's military instincts, Thompson's scientific investigation. Each had approached the isolation of the council chamber differently, but all had made choices that saved lives at terrible cost. Now it was Sam's turn. Chancellor Velthar met him at the docking bay, but this time the alien was not alone. Representatives from dozens of species had gathered to see Earth's newest representative. They stood in respectful silence as Sam walked past them. "Captain Rodriguez," Velthar said formally, "the galaxy owes humanity a debt that can never be repaid." Sam looked around at the assembled aliens. Some had tears in their eyes, others bowed as he passed, and many simply watched him with expressions of profound respect and sadness. "They know what I'm going to do," Sam said. It was not a question. "They know what you must do," Sky Singer Ralthess said, her golden feathers dim with sorrow. "And they know what it will cost your people." Sam nodded and continued walking toward the council hall. As they moved through the corridors, he noticed that the station's normal business had stopped. Shops were closed, the public areas were empty, and even the maintenance robots had been shut down. The entire galaxy was holding its breath. In the council hall, Sam saw something unprecedented. Instead of the usual chaos of diplomatic preparation, every representative sat in silent meditation. The crystalline beings hummed softly. The energy, creatures pulsed in slow rhythms, and even the most aggressive warrior species sat still and quiet. "Why are they all here?" Sam asked. "Usually only a few representatives attend sessions." "Because this is the most important decision in galactic history," said the lead Time Weaver, materializing beside Sam. "And because they wanted to honor the sacrifice that your species is about to make." Sam felt the weight of billions of eyes watching him. "Will it work? Will destroying our sun actually stop the devourer?" "Yes," the Time Weaver replied. "But Captain Rodriguez, there is something you must know before you enter the chamber. The Silent Watchers have made an offer that they have never made before." Sam turned to see the energy beings approaching, their forms more solid and bright than any previous human representative had described. When they spoke, their voices seemed to come from the space between stars. "Captain Rodriguez, we are the remnants of the Eternal Empire, a civilization that faced the same choice you now face 10,000 years ago. We chose to save ourselves and sacrifice others. The guilt and cosmic justice transformed us into what we are now." Sam studied their shifting forms. Dr. Thompson mentioned this in his reports. What he did not know is that our transformation was not permanent. Another Silent Watcher continued. "We have spent 10 millennia watching and waiting for a species that could bear the weight of necessary sacrifice without losing their essential goodness. Humanity has proven to be that species." A third Silent Watcher drifted closer. "We offer you a choice that we have never offered before. If you agree to sacrifice your sun to save the galaxy, we will merge our energy with your star before it dies. The combination will create something new, a stellar entity that can both stop the devourer and preserve your world." Sam felt his heart skip. "Earth would survive?" "More than survive," the first Silent Watcher said. "Your sun would become a beacon of life and hope, powered by our eternal energy. But there is a price." Sam had known there would be a price. "What do you want?" "You must join us," the Silent Watcher explained. "To complete the merging, we need a human consciousness to guide the process. You would become one of us, an energy being dedicated to watching over the galaxy's moral choices." Sam thought about his wife and children back on Earth, about the life he would be giving up. Then he thought about the 3 trillion beings across the galaxy who would die if the devourer was not stopped. "I'll do it," he said simply. The assembled representatives in the hall seemed to sense his decision. A sound like a collective sigh echoed through the chamber as hundreds of species released breath they had been holding. The deep bell rang, calling Sam to the council chamber. As he walked toward the massive door, every alien in the hall stood in respect. Some saluted, others bowed, and many simply watched with tears in their eyes. The door opened, and Sam entered the chamber for the first and last time as a human being. Thikir, silent watchers followed him inside, their forms now blazing with anticipation. The holographic displays showed the Void Devourer approaching inhabited space, its massive form consuming everything in its path. Sam sat in the central chair and looked at the control panel that would trigger the sequence to destroy Earth's sun. His finger hovered over the activation button. "Will it hurt?" he asked. "The transformation?" "No," the silent watchers replied in unison. "It is like falling asleep and waking up as starlight." Sam thought about all the human representatives who had come before him, making impossible choices in this very chair. Morrison faced with trade wars, Martinez choosing negotiation over violence, Thompson discovering the truth about humanity's burden. Each had carried the weight alone. But Sam would not be alone. He would become part of something larger, an eternal guardian watching over the galaxy's conscience. He pressed the button. Far across space, Earth's sun began to change. Instead of the violent explosion that everyone expected, the star started to glow with a new kind of light. The silent watcher's energy merged with the stellar fire, creating something that had never existed before in the universe. Sam felt his consciousness expanding, his human thoughts becoming part of something vast and timeless. He could sense every living being in the galaxy, feel their hopes and fears and dreams. The transformation was not painful, but it was final. The Void Devourer struck the transformed sun and simply stopped existing. The hungry entity that had consumed dozens of star systems was absorbed into the new stellar entity, its destructive energy converted into life-giving light. On Earth, people looked up at their sun and saw that it burned with a different color. Now, a warm golden light that seemed to pulse with gentle intelligence. They did not know that their star now contained the consciousness of Sam Rodriguez and the ancient wisdom of the Silent Watchers. In the council chamber, where Sam Rodriguez had made his choice, a new kind of silence settled. It was not the silence of emptiness, but the silence of peace. The galaxy was safe, Earth survived, and humanity had once again proven that they could bear the unbearable for the sake of others. But this time, they would not carry the burden alone. Admiral Kate Sullivan arrived at the Galactic Council Station 6 months after Sam Rodriguez's transformation. The station looked the same from the outside, but Kate could sense that everything had changed. Ships from across the galaxy flew in, formation around the station, their crews working together in ways that had never been seen before. The transformation of Earth's sun had done more than save the galaxy from the Void Devourer. It had fundamentally changed how every species viewed humanity and their own responsibility for moral leadership. Kate walked through corridors that buzzed with new energy. Alien species that had barely spoken to each other for centuries were now working side by side on projects that benefited the entire galaxy. The fear and mistrust that had dominated galactic politics for millennia was slowly being replaced by something unprecedented: hope. Chancellor Velthar greeted Kate at the docking bay, but he was not the same being who had welcomed previous human representatives. His silver skin seemed brighter, and his movements carried a sense of purpose that had been missing before. "Admiral Sullivan," he said, "welcome to a transformed galaxy." Kate looked around at the bustling activity. "I can see the changes. My briefings mentioned increased cooperation between species, joint research projects, shared defense initiatives. Sam's sacrifice really changed everything, didn't it?" "Captain Rodriguez did more than sacrifice himself," Sky Singer Ralthes said as she approached them. The bird-like creature's golden feathers seemed to shimmer with their own light now. "He showed us that the burden of moral choice does not have to be carried alone." As they walked toward the council hall, Kate noticed construction work happening throughout the station. Walls were being moved, new chambers were being built, and teams of architects from different species were working together on blueprints. "What's all the construction about?" Kate asked. "We are rebuilding the council chamber," Velthar explained. "The age of forcing humans to make decisions in isolation is over. We are creating a new system where all species participate in moral decision-making, but with humanity serving as the final ethical authority." Kate stopped walking. Wait, I thought my job was to be Earth's representative, the same as Morrison, Martinez, Thompson, and Rodriguez. Your job is much more important than that, said a familiar voice that seemed to come from the walls themselves. Kate looked up and saw points of light moving through the station's architecture, and she realized that Sam Rodriguez was speaking to her. Sam, she said, her voice filled with wonder. I am still here, Kate, just in a different form. I am part of the Silent Watchers now, but I remain connected to humanity and to Earth. His voice was warm and reassuring, though it echoed strangely in the corridors. The transformation of Earth's sun created a new kind of consciousness, Velthar explained. Captain Rodriguez and the ancient Silent Watchers merged into something that can guide galactic civilization toward ethical choices, while remaining connected to the practical needs of individual species. They reached the council hall, and Kate saw that it had been completely redesigned. Instead of the small chamber where humans had stood alone, there was now a vast circular amphitheater with sections for every species in the galaxy. At the center where the old human chair had been, there was a raised platform surrounded by streams of gentle light. This is where you will work, Sky Singer Ralthess said. Not alone, but as the leader of the new Galactic Ethics Council. Kate walked down to the central platform and looked around at the empty seats that would soon be filled with representatives from hundreds of worlds. What exactly will I be doing here? Teaching, said another familiar voice. Kate turned to see the Yao energy forms of the Silent Watchers, including the bright new presence that was Sam Rodriguez gathering around the platform. You will help other species learn to make the kind of moral choices that humans have always made instinctively. The lead Silent Watcher, one of the ancient beings from the Eternal Empire, spoke next. For 10,000 years we have watched civilizations rise and fall based on their ability to choose between self-interest and universal good. Most species fail this test. Humans are the first to consistently pass it. Kate felt the weight of this responsibility settling on her shoulders. And now you want me to teach others how to think like humans? Not how to think like humans. Sam's voice corrected her gently. How to think like moral beings. Humans are not inherently better than other species, Kate. You have simply developed cultural and psychological traits that prioritize collective welfare over individual gain. Velthar approached the platform. Admiral Sullivan, the first session of the new Ethics Council begins tomorrow. We have 3 major decisions to make. How to distribute the new energy technology that emerged from your son's transformation, how to handle first contact with a newly discovered civilization, and how to prevent the kind of moral isolation that created the Silent Watchers in the first place. Kate nodded and took her place at the center of the platform. As she sat down, the streams of light around her brightened, and she felt a connection forming between herself and every other consciousness in the galaxy. I can feel them, she said in wonder. Every species, every world, their hopes and fears and dreams. That is the gift of the transformed sun, Sam explained. It allows for true empathy between species, the ability to understand how decisions affect everyone, not just your own people. Over the following days, Kate worked with representatives from across the galaxy to establish the new system of moral governance. Instead of forcing humans to make impossible choices alone, the Ethics Council brought together the wisdom of all species while maintaining humanity's role as the final arbiters of difficult decisions. The new energy technology derived from Earth's transformed sun was shared freely with all civilizations, but with strict guidelines about its use. The newly discovered civilization was approached with caution and respect, with first contact protocols designed to protect both sides from cultural contamination. Most importantly, the Council established the Silent Watcher Protocol, a system designed to prevent any species from facing the kind of moral isolation that had transformed the Eternal Empire into energy beings. The goal is not to eliminate difficult choices, Kate explained to the assembled representatives during the first official session. The goal is to ensure that no one has to face those choices alone. As the months passed, Kate watched the galaxy transform around the new ethical framework. Wars decreased as species learned to consider the universal impact of their conflicts. Trade became more equitable as civilizations developed genuine empathy for each other's needs. Scientific research accelerated as knowledge was shared freely rather than hoarded for competitive advantage. But perhaps most importantly, Kate saw that humans were no longer viewed as the galaxy's moral executioners. Instead, they had become teachers and guides, helping other species develop their own capacity for ethical thinking. On the first anniversary of Sam Rodriguez's transformation, Kate stood on the observation deck of the Council Station and looked out at Earth's sun. It burned with that strange new golden light pulsing gently in rhythms that seemed almost like a heartbeat. "Do you miss being human?" she asked, speaking to the light itself. Sam's voice came back to her, warm and peaceful. "I miss the simple pleasures of human life, the taste of food and the feeling of rain. But Kate, I have become something that I never could have imagined. I am part of every sunrise in the galaxy now, connected to every life and every hope." Kate smiled as she watched, the transformed sun pulse with gentle light. "And Earth?" "Earth is safe," Sam replied. "More than safe. The energy from our sun is healing the damage that centuries of conflict have done to the galaxy. Planets that were barren are becoming fertile again. Species that were dying are finding new life." As Kate looked out at the stars, she understood that humanity's role in the galaxy had not ended with Sam's transformation. It had evolved into something better. Instead of carrying the burden of moral choice alone, humans now shared that burden with every species in the galaxy. The age of standing alone in the council chamber was over. The age of standing together had begun, and at the center of it all, Earth's sun burned with the light of sacrifice transformed into hope, a beacon that reminded every civilization in the galaxy that the greatest strength came not from standing alone, but from choosing to bear the weight of moral responsibility together. Kate returned to the Ethics Council chamber, where representatives from dozens of worlds waited to discuss the next challenge facing galactic civilization. She was no longer alone, and neither was humanity. The galaxy had learned to stand together, and the stars themselves had become witnesses to the power of choosing universal good over individual gain.